So one of the premier OG gank assassins is Zeratul. He does a lot of damage. He has a lot of mobility. He can be very frustrating to play against versus a very good Zeratul player. If you're not as familiar with Zeratul, you're probably watching this, meaning that, well, we're going to go over that. We're going to go over some tricks with Zeratul, the talent builds you should go, because there's technically 2 builds. If you get really, really good with Zeratul, you can consider going some other talents like double Vorpal at 7, which can be pretty toxic in the right hands. But we're going to talk about Zeratul. A few things to note about Zeratul, right? So his cleave is where a lot of your damage is going to come from. But you look at this and it's 200 damage. It's not bad, but it's not great. It's an AoE damage, but it's on a 6-second cooldown. As a melee assassin, it's very hard to stay in a fight for a long period of time when your health bar is so squishy and you lack any CC, and it's hard to heal, which is where Zeratul comes into. And so because of that, you have to be very careful about this. So much weight for Zeratul is put in first post-level 10, depending on the build, but mostly post-level 16, meaning that if I'm on Volskaya, Zeratul's not as appealing. If I'm on a map that favors early objective, it's not very appealing. Hanamura, tough until late game, and you get snowballed pretty easily. Battlefield, not great. Those types of maps where you got to have a heavy impact early, Zeratul's not the hero for you. Zeratul might work on Volskaya if you have enough tools to make that happen, but then you're probably playing a level or 2 down. Singularity Spike, think of this as a high mobility tool. This actually deals a lot of damage and it's got a pretty significant slow. It does take a moment to blow up, but we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, how you can combo off of this, because this does tend to fall into the mobility that this build goes around, and your blink, which is pretty self-explanatory. Vorpal Blade. One of the more unique parts of this is whenever you auto attack something, it's a non-structure basic auto attack. You have 3 seconds to press the 1 key, which it's on by default, and you can change it, to go back to that target to do a lot of damage. The target is revealed during those 3 seconds, so even if they go around fog or hug a corner, you're still going to see them, and it makes it easy to go back so you know what's going on. But this is where a lot of the playmaking comes in. Your W is one form of mobility. When you talent into it, your E is one form, and your Vorpal is another. Your trait, obviously, is whenever you're out of combat for 3 seconds, you go into stealth, yada, yada. Let's talk about the build, because there's one build that's still good, but after we talk about this, we're going to talk about some talents on where you can deviate from the norm. For what it's worth, Zeratul still has one very consistent build, but once you get used to Zeratul, you can go into a single target blow-up build, and that becomes very appealing. But you've got to know that Zeratul is terrible against heroes like Brightwing, because if you go in and you try and run that single target blow-up build, you generally get polymorphed and you die trying to pull off the full combo, and that can be pretty terrifying. Things that have point-and-click CC like Uther or certain tanks, you have to be very careful playing against those types of things if you do go single target build. But look, at level 1, he has probably the worst level 1 talents in the game. They're all bad. Again, playing Zeratul and staying in a fight for a long time and just auto-attacking a lot is almost impossible. Almost no melee assassin that has ability damage goes into auto-attack builds. This isn't Illidan. This is a very different hero. You're not healing that much the same way. You're not looking to thrive. You are a poke, prod, gank master, and that's where Zeratul comes in. Move unseen, not the hot either. Greater cleave, whether you're going single target build or AoE build, which is what we'll mainly focus on, greater cleave is the one. I don't even really have to go into the talents here because the other ones are so bad and this one's not that great. It just means that your Q is going to hit a lot of targets, and I can tell you if you don't pick this, you're not going to hit nearly as many people in the middle of a team fight, thus making this almost a must pick. If you do get really, really, really good, and I promise it takes lots of hours, maybe you can go into a Shadow Hunter build, and that's about it. Level 4, if I'm going single target blow up build, Psionic Strength is the one that I'm going because I'm looking to blow up a single target with Might of the Nerazim. Might of the Nerazim still can be picked, but what I'm looking to do is Rending Cleave. This means that I'm playing more for a late game build no matter what I do, and I'm playing for post 16. Post 16 makes Zeratul an absolute terrifying monster that's going to be tearing apart teams and doing a lot of damage. And we're going to talk about the ways to do that because it does require your level 1 talent to have a bigger cleave. which for obvious reasons goes good with level 4, but more importantly at level 16. Rending Cleave doing the bonus damage. Now, believe it or not, this actually means Zeratul can, for what it's worth, double soak to an extent. You can Q, you can auto, I believe it's 2 autos after a certain time, and then Q again, but you can just cycle your autos, clear through, and then Q your way out and go. Remember, your Q is a 6-second cooldown, so you open, you're there for no more than 6 seconds, and then you're gone, maybe even quicker than that, which means that that's pretty efficient when it comes to Waveclear. I'll go again, I'm going to talk a little about the single target blow up, but we'll go back and touch on those so we can talk about the synergies because that's where it really comes in. Rending Cleave is the one. Don't even think about going Darkness Descends. I've already talked about it's almost impossible to stay on top of people with single target damage just by autoing. I think there might be a time in a very rare place where you can go into Darkness Descends, into all kinds of other stuff that you can do, but I think it's really, really bad. That's not what you do. You need to play to your strengths, and that's to get in, get on top of people, do damage, Vorpal back in, get on top of them, do some more damage, and hopefully your team is following up, or you're getting the kills to begin with. Level 7. Now, I mentioned using your W as a talent. If you're coming back to Heroes for the first time, Wormhole used to be good. After 1.25 seconds, reactivate Blink to return to the point where it cast from within 4 seconds. This used to be a lot better because you could get in and get right back out, but now it takes 1.25 seconds before you can reactivate this, meaning that that's a very short time frame. The best Zeratools in the world don't even pick this anymore, maybe. But for the most part, they don't, because that window is, as I was saying before, means that, hey, look, I want to get in there, but I'm not going to be in there for a long time. I'm in there to do my damage and then get the heck out of there. Wormhole no longer allows me to have that same type of ability because I don't have that same safety net since this is a little bit longer. Seeker in the Dark is what gives me that single target damage, but it also means that I now have another form of mobility. My W is generally used as an engagement tool. It doesn't matter how it goes, right? So W can be used to the extent where I'm going to W onto a target that I want. It means I can W onto a backline. It means I can W onto a tank just so I can get into the mix of things and use my cleave. It means that I can W onto a minion to either retreat or get away. It means that I can W onto a structure. Anything like that. This means that I can put W onto literally anything that takes damage, and I can use it as mobility for engagement or disengagement, and it makes it so good. It can be reactivated to teleport to the target. You don't have to use it, but it's how you make some big, pretty pog plays, and you get increased movement speed, which means that you can get on top of somebody, get some damage out, blink away, Vorpal in, blink away if you want Might of the Nerazim, but we'll also talk about that combo when we hit the 16. Seeker in the Dark is the way to go. Warp Skirmisher, I've actually played against a very good Zeratul. It's like a Master Grandmaster Zeratul that went this, and I can tell you in the right situation, this thing is god-awful to play against. I absolutely hate it because it's so annoying. It kept bamboozling my team because they wouldn't look for the second charge, and then it was very miserable because I was on a Vala. Nobody likes those games, although this does require a much higher skill cap, and it does mean that you're probably going a slightly different build. Seeker in the Dark is the pick. You should get used to this. This does mean you have to land a skill shot in order for it to work. It's pretty generous, has a good travel speed, has a nice wide width on it, so make sure you're on this. Look for mobility if I'm playing against a Li Ming or somebody. I'm going to use this to be able to wait for them to use their mobility. If they're looking for me, find some way. If I'm playing against maybe a Genji, maybe a Sylvanas, or a Hanzo that has a large gap mobility, I can sit on that and wait. Even a Falstad. Falstad is very squishy and is susceptible to Zeratul because he has Seeker in the Dark and because he has Vorpal Blade to stay on top of those squishy targets, making Zeratul a prime killer against squishies. Seeker in the Dark gives me that mobility. Now the great debate. What do I pick at level 10? For what it's worth, if I want to make a full Q-build combo, Void Prison is still really good. This slows time in an area, basically a stop, almost a stasis. And it does it to allies and enemies for 5 seconds. 5 seconds is a massive window of time to do all kinds of crazy stuff in. It also means that this works for stealing bosses, different things. It can zone out areas. You can zone onto people in the back line. You can basically isolate, like let's say they have a dive comp, I now time out their healer. I can do this. I can set up wombo combos with Ring of Frost, with APOC. Those are the old school combos. There's a lot that I can do to guarantee those types of things. I need to look for that CC and look for that damage that comes in. So with that, Void Prison is good, and it also means that I can go that with my Q build, and I'll talk about that combo shortly. Might of the Nerazim, however, is the new hot. They've buffed this a lot of times to where it's actually pretty good. Now, the one thing you need to figure out about this is the passive part. First off, you activate this to cast an untalented version of Zeratul's most recent basic ability, dealing 50% less damage. Now, here's a couple of things that you can do to balance around this. I was talking to a high-level Zeratul player, and they're like, look, one thing that I like to do is that when I pick Might of the Nerazim, I want to pre-cast Blink before I ever get into a fight, which means that if I do get into a fight, I can still save my Blink and deal with this later. It means that I have two forms of mobility right out of the gate. Instead of pressing ER, I can just press R right away, keep my E, and keep some of those cooldowns. It's kind of a weird way to play around it, but overall, this is how you can actually murk people, okay? Because it casts an untalented ability, it doesn't mean that it doesn't apply to certain things later. But with this, because it means a smaller cleave, it means I don't get the rending cleave. It means that I don't get a lot of that bonus stuff. I don't get all kinds of, bonus stuff. So I need to be very careful about this. But a lot of people make the mistake. And if you've watched my videos, you hear me talk about the importance of auto attacking, especially for heroes that have combos, because it normally should be ability, auto, ability, auto, ability, auto. That is very much a giant chunk of damage that if you aren't using this, after using an ability, Zeratul's next basic attack within 6 seconds deals 30% more damage. You should always be looking to auto attack after this. Now, there are certain circumstances where you're not going to do this. Remember, this is every ability. This works on your W. It also works on your reactivated W with Seeker in the Dark. So you can conceivably auto W, and then just start to do all of your damage in that time frame. We'll talk about that. I hesitated because technically you're level 16. You got to work around a few things. But if I'm using these things, I want to get that out because it's a lot of damage. Or I can W auto W. Another thing is that until they buff this or nerf this out, your Vorpal works the same way. So you can now get that bonus damage every time you're using an ability. So it makes it really easy to make a lot of plays and get that big burst priority damage. So for what it's worth, if you're looking to blow somebody up, and you did go single target build, so a lot of what you want to do, if you remember with the level 4 talent, dealing damage to an enemy hero increases all damage dealt by 6 seconds, or 6% for 3 seconds, stacking up to 30%. So a lot of that comes in to where I'm going to W, auto, Q, auto, and now they are taking so much insane damage that it's just completely obliterating people. This is how you can really be pressured. Now, I know there's a lot of appeal to do this to blow single targets up. If you don't necessarily have the capability because their healer maybe has some burst heal or some armor to pass, Q build is always going to weigh out. It's really hard if you're playing a Zeratul and you're getting used to Zeratul to know when single target comes in. As appealing as it is, if they have a certain amount of CC, and I can't get a full combo off, if they have certain types of armor or instant healing, it makes it much, much less appealing to go single target damage. And Q build, I just play the patient game and wait towards level 16, which is what's scary about Zeratul. So Might of the Nerazim is all about getting onto a target. You can auto W, auto, and then you can R in the middle of that. And when I'm saying W, it's like auto, W, auto. I'm hoping I'm getting this right because there's a lot of autos and a lot of Ws. I'm going to reactivate with my R, which is another just try and get more bonus damage in, which means more damage. And then I'm going to W again. So there's a lot of single target damage that's going to come in by way of W auto, R auto, W auto. It's a really fast combo, and there's multiple combos that you can go with Zeratul. We're going to focus more on the Q build again because it's easier to get into and it's more consistent. Level 13. Now, there's 2 talents here that I think are okay. Now, they actually bumped Shroud of Adun. I don't know how long ago, but it wasn't too long ago. to where I believe this used to be 5 seconds. Hopefully I'm remembering correctly. So getting a shield for 20%, maybe I'm thinking of another stealth hero, but getting this shield is actually not bad, but mending strikes. Now let's go back to talk about those combos. You heard me say auto a lot, and I told you you can't really stay in fights for a long time. Mending strike says that I can auto a lot, be able to stay in a little bit longer, so that when I use my combo and I Vorpal back in, I'm not sitting at 40% health because I'm getting my combo out. I'm auto attacking in the middle of this, and it makes it very easy for me to stay at least 60% or higher just by getting this. This works in a lot of ways, whether I'm in the off lane, whether I'm doing camps. It allows me to get back to a fight pretty easily. So mending strikes is really good. Now, Spell Shield, as it is with every hero that has Spell Shield, this is an activatable. If you go Spell Shield, make sure it's against something like maybe they went Consume Souls, maybe they went Pyroblast, but turn this off. I say this for every hero that has Spell Shield. You should never leave this on. You should only turn this on when you need it. If you don't turn this off, you're playing very poorly, and you should pick something else and accept your fate that you're going to die more times than you should because you didn't go Spell Shield and turn it off and then turn it on when you need it. You should always really work on getting Spell Shield turned off for every hero that you play and only turn it on when needed, else it's just a waste of a talent. Level 16 is where the fun really begins as Zeratul. There's 2 talents here, Sentence to Death and Void Slash. Now, remember, our Q is a bigger Q, and our damage is loaded into our Q. So Void Slash says, if Cleave hits more than one enemy hero, which is why you went the bigger Q, it deals 40% increased damage, and its cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds. Remember, this is a 6-second cooldown. So now this is on a 3-second cooldown if I hit 2, which is actually not hard to do. I'm okay with getting in the middle of a fight, getting in there, Wing, autoing, Qing, autoing, blinking, waiting those few seconds because I now have the cooldown. Now remember, my Vorpal Blade is 3 seconds. So how to use this combo? If I went Might of the Nerazim, I want to W, auto, Q, and if I have time, I'll auto, but normally I'm going to blink away unless there's just nothing that can do damage to me. Then I'm going to wait a couple of seconds before my Vorpal wears off, and I'm going to Vorpal back, auto, Q, assuming that they're still next to each other, and now I have another 3 seconds. I can auto, then I can R with my Q, and then I can auto. Then at that point, hopefully I hit 2 more heroes, and now I have a lot of healing from all of those auto attacks that we've been doing, right, team? And then at that point, I want to try and stay in the fight. And then if I need a few more seconds of leeway, then I can Q again. At that point, if I'm on squishies and they're not dead, my God, what a healer. That's where the damage comes in. Now, here's another trick. If I went Void Prison, I sure would love to get another guaranteed Q. How do I do that? W, auto, or W, and then W again to get on top of a target. Auto, Q, auto, blink away. I'm gone for a few seconds. I'm going to chill. And then I'm going to Vorpal back. And then I'm going to Q again. Then I'm going to drop VP on you because there's still 2 of you there because I'm attacking squishies and you all stand beside each other. Then those 3 seconds that I have to wait, I now have a full 5-second window to re-up on my Q. So for those of you that are wondering, let's go take a look at what that looks like if I want to go into the 16 talent, and we'll just do it on some target dummies because this is exactly how it works. We don't want any bad guys. We don't want anything. We're going to set our level to 16. We're going to go Q, Q, W, Void Prison, whatever here, and then Q here. I don't normally pick Void Prison much these days, so we'll give it a shot and see how this works. So for the sake of this video, you're going to see, pretend these are squishies. My cooldown is 2-3 seconds there, and that's going to do it for me. So a lot of what I want to do is I'm going to be there, and then I'm going to blink away. Then I'm going to Vorpal back on my Q again, then I'm going to VP, and now you're going to see my Q is here, and I can drop that whenever, and I've got plenty of time, and I'm going to Q again. At that point, I've done so much damage that the enemy team doesn't even know what to do anymore, and I've done it to hopefully more than 1 or 2 targets. So a lot of that comes into play that I'm trying to get that single target damage. I Q away, I Vorpal back, I Q. I miss the VP, make it look intentional, Q again, and I hit for 546 on all those, and they continue to bleed out. I've now done a lot of damage in a very short period of time. So that's how it works if you go VP, is that I want to get onto a target, Q, blink away, Vorpal, Q, VP, Q. At that point, again, there's almost no squishy heroes in the game that can take that much damage. Yo, shout out to Kyle Ferguson for the raid in the middle of this video. So that's why Q build can be so good, because it allows you to get 3 guaranteed Qs off if you went VP, 2 guaranteed Qs off if you just hit 2 targets, because it's W, W, auto, Q, auto, blink, Vorpal, auto, Q, auto, and then that's how it works. Now, if I didn't go Void Prison, which I guess we should show you guys what that looks like as well, is that I can get a little more burst damage out of all of that, make it a little bit easier, and we'll set the level up again. I don't want people in my game. And we'll show you how this works. So we're going to Q all the way in, Might of the Nerazim, and I'm probably going to mess up the full combo because, well, there's just a lot to it. So assuming I auto, I'm going to blink away. I'm going to Q in. And you can see that I've done a lot of damage, right? And then my Q is obviously back, which means I can go through and do a lot of damage. But a lot of that comes down to just getting in. Again, normally you're going to start from outside. And so that's generally how that works. We're going to see if we can cleave here to try and hit onto multiple. We'll try and get... I guess we still have cooldowns on. Rip. But a lot of that's pretty much how that works. And you can see the bonus damage there. Now, assuming we went into something else, Might of the Nerazim, basic attack, sentence to death. Let's see how many steps there are to this. We probably missed a few autos, but as you can see, like 4K damage, and I'm pretty sure we missed a few autos because we weren't patient here. Let's try this one more time. We didn't time our Q right, but anyways, you can see how much damage Zeratul can do at level 17. That's more than most Squishy's health bars, and it makes for pretty easy kills late game. Q build obviously is there. Sentence to Death is the single target build that if I went Psionic Strength, it doesn't mean that I have to go them. It just means that they synergize really well to kill one person. So with that Void Slash, that's how you run Void Slash, whether with VP or without VP. And it really depends. Just make sure whatever you do, try and save some form of mobility, because if you don't get those kills and you can't get out, you're pretty reliant on making sure you have that extra 30% movement speed and you're running like hell. So with that, level 4 and level 16, how does this go? Psionic Strength is the same thing, where it's W auto, R, W, or R auto, Q auto, W to reactivate. And again, this is very fast because you have to do this all within a very short time period of this few. It takes 50% longer to explode, which is a 1.5 second window. So in a 1.5 second window, it's W auto, R auto, Q auto, W auto. Good luck. And if you really want to kill somebody, you can blink onto that. So getting back into this, because this is a very complex hero to play at the highest levels, Q build is still very safe and very consistent. Level 20. Now, for most people, I think that if you're getting into Zeratul, Shadow Mending is the way to go. Heal for 60% of the spell damage dealt to heroes. I've already mentioned your auto attacking, and I said at the time of auto attacking, you want to make sure that you're still at least 60% or higher, and you can do that by using your damage and trying to get into there. And you can use that with your mending strikes to really stay up there and to make sure that it's like, look, I still have that 3-second window at that full combo you told me about. I want to Q again. How can I be an absolute monster? Well, I can sit in there and I can heal for days. And they've actually nerfed this to where it's at least more respectable. But in that situation, I can be in the exact same scenario. Then at the end of that combo, I can now Q again and I'm still healing, making me one of the most annoying heroes and the most devastating heroes in the entire game. If I went Void Prison, I will never, ever pick this talent. Ever. ever, ever, because shadow mending is that good. Now, if you're a Zeratul player and you're skipping forward and you're like, when is he going to talk about Twilight Falls? I'm going to tell you I'm not, because this takes Zeratul to a whole different level. If I went Might of the Nerazim and I am really a god and I've got all the mechanics and the mastering down, I'm going to look for another video that goes into the details of Twilight Falls, because this makes for an entirely different ball game, because Might of the Nerazim resets the cooldown of all basic abilities, thus raising the bar that very few people even play at, because this is so much more difficult to run. And Shadow Mending is still really good to where you can feel comfortable running this. So with that, Zeratul is more than okay with playing into those and trying to fit into that. Now, that's the build. Q build is still very strong. Once you start to get the hang of Q build, I would encourage you to try out Psionic Strength and Sentence to Death, but I would only encourage you to do this versus heroes that are squishy, like Falstad, Hanzo, Vala, those types of heroes, even Sylvanas if she has mobility, because you can stay on top of her. I can W to Sylvanas and she can't get away, and if she does get away and she has double E, I still have my Vorpal Blade and a Blink, making her very difficult to try and get away from me, but she does do a lot of damage, which makes it a little scary as a Zeratul. Healers that I'm not going to go against that make it very tough are heroes that have the CC or the instant CC. A hero like Brightwing, impossible. Uther, not impossible, but very difficult. Uther, even to a degree, Malfurion, if he just puts roots under his feet and you get rooted there, you're kind of stuck. If a Malfurion hits Alt-E, it makes it a little scary. So you've got a bunch of different heroes that are going to make it difficult for you, but that shouldn't dissuade you. That just means that Q build is going to be a lot safer than single target build, and that's how that works. And by the way, if you're going to go single target build within Psionic Strength and Sentence to Death, you definitely should be going Might of the Nerazim, else you're going to find it very difficult to kill anybody, and you're kind of wasting your talents. That's not to say Void Person couldn't work if you have the right team to use VP. It just makes it difficult. Now, to go back to a quick point about Void Prison, if you are playing with an APOC Diablo or anybody that's going to throw CC, like Ring of Frost or any of these things that make it worth it, I should never rely on them timing it with my VP. They should rely on me to release it when their heroic is going off, which means that I should be timing my heroic to release at a time when I know the APOC is going to go off. If the APOC goes off under VP and VP is still up, it does nothing. If I release it too early, they walk out of VP. I need to release these things at the right time. That is another responsibility that you have as Zeratul, which if you didn't capture more than one person, you're still being targeted by potentially 4. And even if you capture 2, you're probably still a focus, and it makes it hard for Zeratuls to be like, I need to know my positioning as well as the timing on this, and I'm praying that I don't get CC'd, because if I get CC'd, I can't press R again. So with that, Zeratul, I think, is very good against squishies. He's not great against heroes that I think are going to be infinitely stronger. If they have any type of CC, a point-and-click Diablo can be a little scary, but I can blink out of charges, and that requires another skill level. Garrosh can be a little intimidating if he goes taunt, but at that point, I'm focusing the squishies. Don't be afraid to engage off of a tank. It's not exactly ideal. Zeratul should be a flanking hero. I played with a Zeratul a few months ago that swore that his job was to only kill the squishies, and if he didn't kill the squishies, he would leave the fight entirely. If you do that, you are definitely the #1 worst Zeratul in NA, thus making you a bad hero and a bad player. And I would hope that that is something you never do. You need to find ways to be annoying, to be in a fight, and make sure you have some form of mobility to get in, but more importantly, get out. It's kind of like a tracer, is that once you're in, and if you've used all of your mobility and all you're trying to do is auto attack, you better hope that somebody's about to die, or that somebody is already dead and you're now just trying to mow the rest of the team down, because if that doesn't happen, it's very difficult pre-level 20 because you don't have ways of healing. I mentioned some of the maps earlier. Any map that has an early objective, and Volskaya tends to go to level 20, but it's normally the team that gets the first objective that tends to snowball and set the terms of the fight. I think Zeratul works in that situation, but not that great. Battlefield, bad. Any map where you're going to have early game value. I need to get to 16 as a Zeratul to have true value, which I'm hoping they'll rework some of that stuff to make it better. But overall, Zeratul still is a very intimidating hero. If I pick him on an early game map, you're going to find that your win rate is pretty bad. Hanamura, bad. But if we get to a late game situation, Zeratul is one of the best heroes in the game. Hands down, no doubt about it. Easily a hero that can go in there and smash people. So make sure you pick that around that. The other thing is, where does Zeratul fit in draft comps? Zeratul can play alongside another melee assassin bruiser that does damage. Malthael, Thrall, those types of heroes. Kira does well. If I'm picking Zeratul and Illidan in a tank, I'm a little overcommitted in the melee assassin department. What I mean is other melee assassins that are probably going to have some form of CC that give more. Maiev, Kira are all good heroes, even an Alarak to an extent. It allows me to play up. Kerrigan, again, at that point, I'm kind of all in on that stuff. All the other melee assassins here, probably not that great. Maybe a Samuro, because then we can both dive and make people's lives miserable, hoping it's against the right comp. When it comes to bruisers, Deathwing is fine. Zul in his current state is fine. Malthael is fine. Varian, kinda. Thrall, good. Sonya would be okay. But when I start looking at Chen and Leoric and Artanis and Dahaka and Imperius, they don't necessarily do enough damage. So now I have a melee bruiser that doesn't do a lot of damage, and I have a melee assassin that doesn't do damage until pre-16, meaning that a lot of your early game fights now are very difficult to take. Pairing him with a Garrosh can be counterintuitive or very intuitive if he tosses them and you VP the other side. There's a lot of different and weird quirks that you're going to find with Zeratul, but I don't want to force it. Zeratul can be a solo melee. If you hear me talk about Malthael and those types of heroes, they can do a lot of damage, but they don't really have CC, meaning that I need a tank that can now control a team, and if the other team has a full dive team, and I have a Zeratul, normally that dive team has pretty healthy hit points, and they have different forms of CC or multiple ways of healing, and it makes it very difficult to kill them pre-16, and I can't give my team any control outside of VP, and even then, that doesn't really guarantee anything. So I need to make sure that Zeratul fits in. I don't think he fits into every comp, but he can fit into a lot. Just don't force it. He can be a very game-changing hero post-16, in basically every build that he has, thus making him a very difficult hero to really try and figure out where to fit him in versus what's going to work and what's not going to work. And there's a lot of different quirks that go to that. It's just very difficult to figure out how you're going to make Zeratul work in that situation. But if you can get the hang of it, once you start to get Q build down, start to learn to auto attack between all of these. If you go Might of the Nerazim, if you don't auto attack in Might of the Nerazim, you are missing out on so much damage that you should be embarrassed. There is times where I'm going to W, realize that there's a Diablo diving me instantly, and I'll Q and I'll blink out to dodge that, and I won't get my auto in. You'll know you don't get your auto in because your Vorpal is down, and you can't activate it. So those are things you got to look out for. Make sure that you can get that. And if you're looking, there's a little icon above your Vorpal target in case you're not sure. And that way, again, because they're revealed, makes it easy to figure out who's who. But that's Zeratul, one of the most devastating late-game heroes in the game with game-changing heroic of VP. If your team plays around it, if not, then it's just kind of a weird talent to pick. Might of the Nerazim used to be kind of not great. His old heroic is actually now a level 4 talent. So for that, Zeratul in a much better spot for those reasons, just not necessarily for the early game. We'll see if any changes come in. And that's Zeratul in a nutshell.